With cryptocurrency and technology as it's evolved to at this point, we could almost evolve our economy to a system where tiny little computers are basically our currency, our coin.
The algorithm would not necessarily know what's actually going on. It's only going to be able to look at numbers. And that might
be a good thing.
Well, not necessarily. Not if you're a company that manufactures things.
You need to be able to see, like, to highlight how much greed plays a factor in our economics.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. That is spot on. But it's greed bidirectionally. Greed from the consumer and greed from the supplier. Like, both sides fight each other. That is the dynamic that makes the price become what it is.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, another beer with the guys from Kitchen Sink Microscopy. I am Casey Rochforts, and we would really enjoy it if you'd crack open a beer with us, hit the like button, and hit the subscribe button, and then share that shit with other people so that they can crack a beer and enlighten themselves with the philosophical drunken ramblings of Kitchen Sink Microscopy.
Oh yeah, and I'm Eric Rosenblatt, the guy that really loves space dust. If you'd like to sponsor us, that'd be great.
Yeah, if you could do that by Sunday, that'd be great.
Gonna have to have you come in on Sunday. Hey, even just giving us some free beer, that'd be nice. Although Casey probably wouldn't go for it because they do a lot of IPAs.
Everybody does a lot of IPAs.
Yeah. Yeah. You did a minute microscopy about that. So anyway, we Casey and we write our own music. It's available out there. All kinds of music gathering, collecting, and listening to sorts of places like iTunes and Spotify and stuff. Maybe even Patreon. I don't remember. But
this is actually a really good beer. I almost think we should start doing a minute microscopy here and there where we could just like try a new beer and
oh yeah.
But that's not what we're going to talk about.
No. We've probably already had too much beer now as it is. Drinking out of my KSM glass, which I can't really quite. I don't want to spill, but
so am I. It just so happens.
Yeah. So let's see. So hey, I was going to say about the music before we get too into beer and into microscopies and stuff. We write our own music. So stick around to the end of the show. There's going to be a timestamp, probably somewhere around in this general vicinity. And it'll be a new song for now until we run out of songs. I mean, we've been doing this for 4 years, once a week. So there will come a time where we're going to run out of songs. But right now we haven't run out of songs. So yeah, new song.
I'm trying to keep up. I'm trying to put out at least a song a week. Writing new material and stuff. Stay ahead of the game and all that. But yeah, we also do an episode every week. So
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if you're necessarily ahead of the game at that point. So you can also check out our website. It's ksmvidcast.com. It's kind of where we put all our stuff. And if this channel ever goes dark, that's where you can find out about what the hell's going on.
Whoa. Was that a racial statement?
No, it was like if the lights go out,
Already demonetized.
Demonetized.
New record.
Yeah. Yellow $sign. So Casey, before we get too plastered, what do you want to talk about today?
Well, that ship sailed.
You almost made me spit beer on the keyboard that I bought to replace the keyboard that I spilled beer on and destroyed. Whew, that was a close one.
Yeah. Well, I got to thinking about a new way of looking at economy. Maybe a way that could possibly reduce, if not eliminate, inflation and greed and money hoarding and things like that. And like I just thought it would be kind of interesting to like flesh out the philosophy behind human psychology and economics and find a better way to like blend the two.
Okay, yeah.
So that one respects the other, but still, can exist.
Well, I, do enjoy a bit of studying economics and stuff and pondering ideas. So yeah.
And I don't actually study economics. I just have like a lot of deep philosophical inspections of how they work. It's all like what I observe and why I think it's happening and what I think is going on under the surface, perhaps.
Well, yeah, I mean, observation is something that sadly a lot of economists don't do very often. So that is the first hurdle overcome. So why don't you illuminate us as to your idea? Maybe just start big picture, like in a nutshell.
Yeah, big picture is I think it all began when I started thinking of how economy or economics, I'll say, is a religion. Like I started to look at it. I was like, oh, I want to read up on like the data for, a particular economical phenomenon that has been given a name. Like, oh, there must be some kind of like proof that this is a thing that is observable and testable and repeatable and scientific things like that. I couldn't find any. And I was like, what? This really is just like what do they call it? A Mickey Mouse operation. The whole idea of economics is like we tell ourselves from the ancient texts of yore that it has to be done a certain way. Mm-hmm. And economics cannot exist any other way. But it's like, well, yeah, it could. Because, I mean, when you break it down, it's just an exchange of things.
Yeah.
Like there doesn't have to be hard and fast rules about like what the things that are exchanged are worth, whether or not the supply of them actually matters or just is nice to have, like all these things that we just take for granted. Like how real are they?
Well, I mean, I guess it's kind of like relationships. The idea that there are rules doesn't really make sense because each individual sort of crafts their own worldview and their own rules about what they want and things like that. So the idea that there's one ring to bind them all or whatever, like I think that's kind of nonsense. And yeah, I see what you're getting at with the parallels between economics and religion. And as we talked about in the last lightning round that we did, I would add in politics is also religious as well.
Yeah.
But and here's one of the things. It's like, well, it's the problem is that there is no one sort of, in science, if you're analyzing something or you're dealing with engineering, there's engineering principles which are generally known and understood by all. But with economics, there's
engineering principles are beholden to physics,
exactly,
and things like that.
But with economics, it's sort of like, well, there's these group of people or these people in this group who think things work this way, and there's a totally different group over here that thinks things work totally differently, and like the why and the mechanics of everything, and everybody sort of has their own disparate schools of thought that don't necessarily align. I mean, maybe here and there they align, but they argue all the time, and that is a lot like religions. I mean, think about it. Religions do the same thing. It's like, hey, this is how we are. This is why we're here. That kind of thing. And, oh, it's my God. No, it's my God. And you're a heretic now. That kind of thing. Like, that does happen in economics. Although I think it's a little bit different because, well, it's akin to psychology. In fact, psychology is at the heart of economics. It's human psychology, but also in the study of psychology, there's a lot of different schools of thought about how things work. But because it's like, well, it's the human brain, it's super complex and we don't really understand all of it. People sort of like they mush things into a ball of their own belief system about how it works. And it's like, well, maybe, just like religions, maybe you could be right, but where's the evidence? You have to be able to make predictions and things like that. It's more than just simply explaining why things happen.
Yeah. Before we get too far, I wanted to continue down my thought path to what I actually wanted to bring up.
Yeah. Sorry, you get me going on this.
I started thinking, with cryptocurrency and technology as it's evolved to at this point, we could almost evolve our economy to a system where tiny little computers are basically our currency, our coin. And they are, written with algorithms that, we probably even have technology that makes it so that if you tweak with the algorithm, the whole thing will just like be dysfunctional. So like it would be like there's no way to hack these and make them, counterfeit essentially. But effectively, this little algorithm senses how much it's being used in transactions in the economy, actually driving the economy, and increases its value by just a little bit with each transaction, so that the coins floating around are of value. And it's almost like collecting cards, like baseball cards or Pokemon or whatever. There's some rare ones that you're going to get every now and then that'll be like worth a lot, but it's totally random if you're, going to get that. And then at some point, you're probably going to spend it, and it's going to keep driving up in value, because the longer you sit on it, the algorithm goes the other way. And there you have your flow. Your supply and demand is based on the currency, not on the products. Nobody sets prices. It's actually driven by the market. Like, you could build an economy around money floating around that is in constant flux in their value. But I know technically we have that now with like exchange rates and stuff, and all these market things that people are looking at. But it's like, turn that shit into an algorithm. Like, have a robot take over all those jobs on Wall Street.
Well, and I would have some questions about your proposed mechanics of how this would work. I mean, the people on Wall Street, they're not deciding prices. It's kind of like a bidding war in essence.
I'm not saying they are, but like, point of sale decides. Everyone looks at gas prices and they're like, well, that's what supply and demand does. And it's like, bullshit. Like, we cut off like at most 8% of our oil supply, and it went up like 60%. That doesn't translate,
Well, there's a lot more going on than just that.
Well, yeah, of course there is. But everyone points to supply and demand.
Well, I could see a system like that presenting a few issues, because the algorithm would not necessarily know what's actually going on. It's only going to be able to look at numbers. And that's a good thing. Well, not necessarily. Not if you're a company that manufactures things, and suddenly there's a shortage of steel and you can't make or actually shortage of chips, like is going on now. Cars are getting expensive because of that, because there's not a lot of chips being made. Well, there's a shortage. There's a lot being made. It's just they're not widely available. So the price goes up to reflect that, because, well, I mean, if the price didn't do that, then they just run out and there'd be no cars to have at all. Like, okay, well, you bought the last car for $12,000 and now there's no more new cars. So there you go.
You see, like, you got to think outside that box of how things have always been. Because
no, I'm thinking about how things like, I'm not looking at it from like a doctrinal standpoint. I'm looking at it from an observational standpoint. But okay, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so like, it's not just the coins that change in value. It could also like feed back into a cloud sort of I don't know, like melting pot of the whole forest of algorithms that are coming in, like, and basically tell you in kind of a plug it into the cloud and see what it spits out today sort of sense. Like, how much is this worth today? Like, you would still have prices of things being affected by their physical ability to provide a thing or a service or whatever, but it would actually fluctuate. Like, right now, people drive the price of gas up, and then it never really comes down below a little bit of a wavering set point, but it's nowhere near the original set point, even though it could be.
Theoretically, yeah. Well, and that is,
I mean, like, yes, I know there's a lot of things that go into play, but you need to be able to see, like, to highlight how much greed plays a factor in our economics.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. That is spot on. But it's greed bidirectionally, greed from the consumer and greed from the supplier. Like, both sides fight each other. That is the dynamic that makes the price become what it is. Like, me as a manufacturer, I want to make the shittiest, cheapest possible thing that I can sell for the most money. And you as the consumer want the best possible thing for the least amount of money. And somewhere in the middle that we meet. That's where
So-
those curves come together.
So that's another weakness I'd never thought of in the current system. And like a smart coin would have a way around that, because like it would almost be based on eBay feedback. It's like, if you want to build a cheap ass product that's going to break, people are going to be like, well, I don't really want to buy that. And like, the algorithm will say, hey, your shit may cost nothing to make, but now it's worth nothing either. So, like, it would almost like, it's a yin yang sort of flow to it. It's not a top down solution, and it's not a bottom up solution. It's a complete like intertwining of the two.
I do find what you're talking about interesting, but like, I guess something that is.
Oh, I know it could never happen, but
well, yeah, okay, yeah, you're right. You're never going to change
because humans,
the economy, and politics and government.
Make a good sci-fi book or something.
But no, in fact, that's actually a good way to tell that story. To like write a book about it, and that actually has a lot more influence than I think people realize. But something that I'm thinking about, if you have a dynamic, let's just call it the coin, right? Like whatever it is, currency or something. So if the currency adjusts its like, I don't know how you would adjust a value, because value is subjective, but let's say it did. And the currency just changed proportion as things fluctuated. Well, if it's the universal currency, if everybody's exchanging it for anything, so let's say, well, like with gas prices right now, gas is really expensive. So you want to adjust that down so it's less expensive. Well, now everything is adjusted because the coin is changing its numerical value. So, I mean, it's all or nothing in that regard.
But it is still based on value, subjectivity, supply and demand. I mean, and effectively, if you believe that supply and demand does actually drive like base point of how much something is sold for on, the market determines or whatever. If you actually think that's a thing, that would still occur with currency that is constantly in the black, this for that sort of flow. I don't know.
So you're talking like a endpoint price fluctuation or a currency fluctuation? Like the price tags. So you have a set value of currency, right? Like it's a known constant. But then this system dictates the price tags on the shelves in the stores, or does it internally change its proportion to reflect some sort of external forces, like high oil prices? You want to compensate for that, so you make like less or more, like whatever to compensate for that.
Yes. Okay. So there's a lot going on there. As far as like oil prices are really high, like you got to think in a situation like that, there's not really going to be these spikes, like not very often anyway, like unless there's like some actual catastrophe where like there's a chemical in our atmosphere that now makes all oil inert to what we normally use it for. We can't use it anymore, like something like that. But
or it's like, shall we play a game? And there's global thermonuclear war, and all the oil refineries are nuked. And then it becomes like Mad Max, where the gas is like the most valuable thing because nobody can get it. I could see that happening, but I mean, I'm just thinking like, the question is, are you talking about a system that controls the seller's price tag that they put on the thing, or a system that controls the supply of exchange medium, the coin?
Well, okay, so like we're going about it pretty haphazard. I suppose I didn't explain like all of it. I was thinking that there would be some kind of, as far as like physical coins go, kind of tie it to, maybe even just like a baseline of, your country's population or something, with like a certain amount per person that goes into circulation.
Yeah.
And then you can adjust
an interesting idea.
You could adjust that as things ebb and flow, but like if you just did it as kind of a pretty close average, there's going to be more than enough currency going around. So basically you have a physical set of coins for a fiscal decade, however long you want.
Some time period, yeah.
And each of those, like, we'll have, I don't know, like a little solar powered display, like we could do that with calculators in the 70s. So I think
when you initially said it, I was thinking of like isolinear chips from Star Trek, something like that.
Me too.
Like a little processor in there and some NVRAM and stuff, and
basically
power supply. And there's actually like nuclear batteries that are on the horizon too, that could run for like hundreds of years. So what you're talking about is not infeasible. Like it's actually just about here.
That would be pretty cool. I mean, like smart money.
Mm-hmm.
It almost takes. I feel like it would almost take the greed out of economics enough to let us allow humanity back in. Because crime and stuff like that, it's all born out of need, and need is based on how much money you have, sadly.
Well, I'd say crime, it's more complex than that.
Of course, it's more complex. Everything we talk about is more complex.
Well, that's true. And I mean, I find it really entertaining, like this conversation with how much beer we've had and will have, that trying to wrap our heads around these very, very complex topics that, people with PhDs struggle to understand. We'll do it in an hour or so. So, I mean, like, I get the motivation, but the implementation is the thing that I'm not sure. Well, it might be possible. Okay, if you put like a machine learning system, some kind of AI to the task of like, hey, solve this problem, it might be able to, but I don't think humans could. And in fact, what you're talking about, selfishness and greed and things, will always be injected into a system like that. So when you put humans to the task of developing a solution for something like that, they're going to change it to serve their own needs. So, humans don't know.
I guess I'm Gene Roddenberry in that aspect, that I'm like really optimistic that if we had something that awesome, it would actually, like, people would just go with it. I mean, like, there'd be no way to regulate it. Like, I mean, somebody obviously has to, like, adjust it with the census or whatever. Like, there's got to be like minimal regulation, but as far as the actual like value or amount of currency, like, there's just strict, hard, fast rules fucking written in the Constitution. I don't know. Like,
well, no,
like,
you're right.
Why shouldn't we adjust our Constitution with technology? Because from henceforth, that's how we're going to be living our lives. Fuck what the founding fathers wanted. They couldn't have foreseen what we have now. Well,
no, but then again, they didn't write the Constitution about tech. They wrote it about humans, and humans haven't really changed all that much in that time.
Based on the tech. Tell
I'm
me,
talking
like,
about psychology, not
no. If
Okay.
you and I from the 1980s jumped into a DeLorean and wound up here and watched everyone, like walking around like this, we'd be like, is everyone in a fucking trance? What's going on? Like, human behavior has changed as a result of technology.
Well,
and psychology.
It has to some extent, but like the core of what drives people is still the same. Really not that different. And that
the same, but it's like we've nurtured certain aspects of that humanity. I refuse to believe that there's no way to reverse that.
Well, no, I agree. But have we done it for better or for worse too? Like, are we better off now, or are we maybe?
I would argue no, probably not.
I mean, we're better off.
I mean, it's always best to assume you could be better.
True. And I guess that, again, that's subjective. Like, what is better? I mean, it depends on what you want in life, right? Like me, I just want to live free and live on the sea. You might want something different. And so, yeah, I mean, better is subjective. But so.
Well, okay. So imagine like I wanted to get into this earlier because you mentioned something about value. You and I like Red Dwarf. Not a whole lot of people like Red Dwarf. So now if we want to buy Red Dwarf paraphernalia, like DVDs or toys or whatever, like they're going to be pretty fucking affordable. Let's face it. Like what you value, whether or not it's like more popular or less popular, is going to like help build the economy and help boost happiness. For like people who like things out on the fringe, they're actually going to have like the ability to really like immerse themselves in what they love. Like because there's not a whole lot of Red Dwarf attention, it's kind of ignored on a commercial level too.
Yeah, except for that weird ill-fated US version of Red Dwarf. Oh my god. Well, you're kind of making the argument for supply and demand there. I mean,
yes, but from the perspective of the currency itself.
Well, sure, but like for instance, the Mana Machine books that we have, you have the uber expensive one because there's very few of them, and well, people are willing to pay a lot to get it. Like, but then you go and look at some kind of romance novel and well, they're throwing them away because nobody wants them. And there's tons of them. Like, I don't know. I guess too much beer.
I guess I can just see it working the exact same way. The same frequency, the same wavelength of effect would be happening in the economy. It's just the source would be different. Like the source of where that number value that applies so perfectly with our psychology, like where that lands, it's still a number that lands somewhere.
Okay,
it's just not. It's not coming from the product. It's coming from the purchase. It's like, well, you might say like with gas. Well, you might say it's a supply and demand thing. Like, oh, we're running out of oil or whatever. But people kind of know that's bullshit, but they pay it anyway. But it's like the actual demand for gas isn't changing. People drive to work every day like clockwork. Like their consumption is not drastically changing when these prices skyrocket for
That would be the
bullshit like this.
demand versus the supply, I guess.
Yeah.
And now, granted, there are some other factors with gas that might be a bad example.
Well, like you keep saying other factors as if there's like something that you want to blame more than greed. So what is it exactly?
Well, it's that it's a very complex system. There's a lot of pieces, moving pieces, that form the picture of price.
Name one.
Region, transportation, manufacturing, materials, labor. Like there's, I mean, I could go on and on, but there's like a ton of different factors that go into like creating a thing. R&D, investment, loans, like you're building. I mean, it's
sure, but like, each one of those in itself is a point A to B where an economic exchange is happening. Yeah. And the same exact flow through the whole system is going to affect those interactions in the same way.
Those economic exchanges are no different than barter. Like, I have a thing and I want to get rid of it, right? I'd like to trade it for something. Like, in fact, a good example, the Supra that I have, the guy I bought it from, he wanted to buy a drum set. And so I knocked on his door and I was like, hey, that Supra I've been seeing in your driveway, he's selling it? And he's like, no, not selling it. Then like a couple weeks later, came by and knocked on his door, asked him the same question. And he's like, well, my girlfriend is kind of like annoyed that I have this thing in the driveway and I kind of want a drum set. So maybe. And so it was kind of like the price that he sold it to me for was the cost of the drum set. So it was kind of like barter. Like, yeah. Oh, well, that's a good description of that.
That's a good description of how both of, the old ways and the new ways would actually work. It's just with a different tool.
Well, so if you have something that changes, I don't know how you would change intrinsic value, but let's say you could. If you had something that did that, if I wanted that Supra from that guy, and I had so many coin isolinear chips, and wanted to exchange it, how would the system know what it was I was selling and he was buying, that what we were trading for? Because then if the system automatically adjusts based on some force,
so I see where you're going. You're saying like if there's no like point of sale scanning for a particular transaction,
well, no,
then it kind of can't really feed in all the data that it needs, right?
Well, kind of. But my point is like,
I mean,
it
overall,
would have to know everything everybody's buying everywhere all the time. Because if I gave him the coins in exchange for the Supra and he went to buy the drum set, but there was some kind of oil crisis that suddenly changed things, and now all of a sudden the coins are worth less for exchange. Now he can't buy the drum set because they're like dynamically adjusting to all transactions everywhere.
But okay, so you say intrinsic value, and God, I hope I can get this out of my head to make sense.
It's okay. It's all right. No hurry.
I mean, this is weird territory we're treading upon.
Yes.
A new way of doing the economy. Like, so, okay. So if you want to assign some kind of outward value to something, like you're selling it, and not just like a one-off exchange, right? Like you want a price point to appear for it. Well, then you're going to have to like upload it to the cloud in some way, whether it's automatic or you do the books or whatever. But if it's just two people exchanging things, you have a coin that says, hey, this is how many, like whatever the unit is, this is how much this coin is worth. What about this for that? You know, like that's all that is.
Wait.
And then it counts that as an exchange.
I have an idea, like, and I'm skeptical of your plan, but I have an idea of how you could do this. It would be like the barter system. So as a chicken farmer, you're like, hey, I want a tractor. I have a lot of chickens. So I want to sell 40 chickens for a tractor. And the system will figure out how to make that happen automatically, if it's even possible. So the dynamic adjustment isn't in the value of the coin, it's in the exchange of one good for another at the time of sale.
Exactly.
Like
that's why I was saying in the beginning, like all this stuff we've been talking about is just like spitballing ideas as you throw things at me. But initially I was thinking it just be that simple. Like every time there's an exchange, you know, that coin goes up in intrinsic value, I guess, let's say, by a certain amount for a certain amount of time until the next, you know, time that it is used in an exchange. And then that particular coin becomes worth more and more. Whatever something is worth has nothing to do with how much these coins are fluctuating. It's just you divide them by however much, you know, like tap it on the item and it subtracts the 732 matchsticks or whatever, you know.
Well, I could see a bit of a problem happening there if you have, I guess I'll call them special coins, like coins that were exchanged when the market was at a particular state, where, you know, say 40 chickens could buy you a tractor. Well, those are a lot more valuable than, say, 100 years down the road when, you know, John Deere builds their like cyber space tractor and it takes like 1,000 chickens to get them. But your coins that you acquired during that time can still buy a tractor that you paid 40 chickens for. So those would be super valuable. So it's like I could see the same kind of problems happening.
Who's eating this chicken?
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
I was trying to hang on there, but I think I fell off the wagon toward the end there.
It's okay. Like this is a really fun thought experiment, and really, I don't think most people have. Actually, I don't think anybody's ever had a conversation like this before.
Seriously, like, I mean, it's talking about like changing the entirety of a facet of human psychology, like redirecting the river.
Which I don't know that you can. It's kind of like prohibition.
I mean, certain things would still happen. You know, certain things would come about. You know, like things of rarity might become like not that cool. Like maybe we just don't give a shit that it's rare. You know, maybe we're like, oh, well, that thing's running out. I guess we should look for a new thing to really enjoy, which we do anyway. Let's face it. That's what a trend is.
True. I would also throw in a little bit of a curveball. How about regional differences?
Now, what do you mean by that?
Well, so for instance,
regional as in like, oh, I don't need parkas because I live in the desert, or
well, that, and also getting something from one place to another. You ever seen the Alaskan Road Trucker series on what is it?
Yeah.
Discovery? Like they get paid a lot of money to bring really like everyday goods to
Yeah.
the middle of nowhere. And also like Vashon here in Washington, Vashon Island, gas is like $1 more a gallon because, well, you have to take a ferry to take your truck with gas to the gas station to fill the tanks.
Yeah.
So that costs something, whether costs resources and time. So that is reflected in the price.
I don't think that would change.
Well, I mean, it would because the coins would be exchangeable no matter where you went.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a little bit more like mathematical in that, like, oh, this point of sale, of this thing has fewer transactions. It's either in lower demand or harder get to ability. I don't know. I can't think of the word. Accessibility.
Yeah, accessibility. There you go.
Get to ability.
Oh man.
There might actually be like I can't think of it right now because beer, but there might actually be a way to like mathematically tell the difference transactionally, whether or not something is based on like whether people want it or whether it's hard to come by.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm sure there are psychological minute differences in buying patterns there. Because, like I said earlier, whether or not something is scarce, the demand isn't actually changing. Just the amount of the demand that will actually be lucky enough to get the supply is.
Well,
so
the supply and demand are not.
You might think it's two sides of the same coin, and it is, but like that's how it would work. Like if you're flipping over to the other side of the coin, whether you're pricing the item or letting the coin price the economy, it's still following the same path.
Kinda. I mean, supply and demand are intertwined in the way that the recent toilet paper panic happened.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's a good example of the two being linked.
But I think everybody understands the basics of supply and demand.
Sure. But our like interest in the mana machine and that like super rare book that like nobody wants, being really expensive, that's kind of the unlinked version of that, where there's not really a lot of demand, but there's also not really a lot of supply either. And no one's like, oh my God, we're about to run out of the mana machine book. I better go out and buy one. That doesn't happen. It's just that there's so few people selling them and there's so few people buying them. So the people who are buying them are willing to pay a premium for something that, well, they couldn't otherwise have. Like you can't just pop on down to your local bookstore, if there is such a thing anymore, and buy the mana machine books. So when you find them, well, it's like, this is the last chance I could probably, like,
and the readout, when you plug that into the cloud to say like, what should this be worth based on transactions? It's going to tell you like, it's going to be worth 2,000 matchsticks or whatever, that'll still happen. But before I forget something you said, shit, I might have forgot.
Fuck. Oh shit.
Oh yes. So the simplicity of supply and demand. This is just a little thought experiment. There's one apple. You and I both want the apple.
Mm-hmm.
What do you suggest we do?
Well, it depends on whether we're warfaring or
don't
not.
Get overly complicated. It's just you and me. Like, what do you do?
Okay. I see. Well, we would probably discuss some kind of something like, hey, I want that apple. I would tell you.
Right. And then I'd say, yeah, I want that apple. I'm trying to get at, like, you would say, let's split it.
Yeah. But let's say it's indivisible.
I don't want to go through the weeds too much. I'm just trying to say, like, we would fucking split an apple, right?
We would. You and
Yeah.
I would totally do that. But let's
Like
say it's
we're not
something
going to
indivisible.
argue about who needs it more, who wants it more. We're not going to be like, let's cut it 70-30.
Yeah.
We only get into that when we
but what
for
if
some
it's
reason
something...
ascribe like a coin to something and then a value and
the coin,
like number terms.
The coin is basically just a more advanced form of barter.
Yeah.
Ultimately,
I'm saying the tie to a number.
Yeah,
you know, like everything is barter. We just tie everything to a number for some reason, so that we can quantify it.
Well, that is the reason. Yeah.
which is silly. Like, but
I don't know if it's silly. Because it allows people who have different products and services and different needs of products and services to be able to exchange.
Here's why it's silly. It's silly because it creates little pockets, actually big pockets, of people that can't get things they want because they don't have the means to. Like, that's the part of supply and demand. Hang on, that's the part of supply and demand that applies to like humans themselves and value itself, and that's, I don't know, inherently unfair. Like,
I agree.
Everyone should really have access to like life, liberty, happiness, and the happiness is the thing that like we really don't focus on.
I agree, but would the issues you're talking about be eliminated if we took the numbers out? If it was just purely barter, would those things just be a thing of the past, or would it still exist?
No, and that's why I'm not taking the numbers out. I'm just putting the power of the numbers in the economy itself. Like,
okay,
worth is following the trend of what's in demand, basically. Like, in that region, you're going to see the flow of more worthy coins. Like, our entire psychology will change. Like, maybe we won't have like a favorite bar. It'll be like, where's the cool bar this week or whatever, and you'd gravitate toward that. Like, it would entirely change our psychology, but like, I think it might be just slightly for the better, because I feel like your chance of like being rich at some point, you know, like able to basically go buy some things that you really love that might be rare or whatever, like that's random effectively. Like, in fact, your odds increase the more you contribute to the economy.
Yeah,
if you think about it.
You're
so like,
correct about that.
Yeah. So it would actually random. Like, it would get economy flowing, and you could entirely have things on the black market be part of that economy.
Yeah. And I don't know that
like directly contributing.
I don't know,
like the fair tax, only it's fair economy.
Yeah.
Or fair coin, I guess. That should be the name of it. Fair coin.
Fair coin.
Has that been taken?
No, I don't think so. So, okay. Well, we said it here first. So copyrighted.
Yep.
Yeah.
And documented here on this May 31st.
It's a trademark of KSM now. So, bitch, please get out of here.
At 2021 in 2022.
Nice. I mean, I get what you're going for. I don't know that it could be implemented. And yes, you're right. No change will ever happen. This is just kind of a fantasy exercise, because it's never going to happen.
It would depend on the entire world doing it. And people would probably be like, oh no, one world economy. But if you break it down to what economy is, we already have a one world currency. Like, the exchange of things is just universal.
Yeah, pretty much. and we
just differ on our agreements of like what something is worth and what like what this coin is worth and blah, blah, blah. It really wouldn't be any different. It's just a different way of doing it.
I would certainly like to see an experiment done.
That would be cool.
What you're talking about, because
we should actually.
Well, because what if, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm never a hardliner. Like, oh, this is the way things are. And this is how it should be. Like, well, if I'm presented with new evidence, I'm willing to change my mind and see things a different way, right? That's science.
Yeah.
I do have a little bit of concern about things becoming too algorithmic and less organic,
or privacy issues.
Well, that could be an issue too, because the thing is, like what you'd brought up very early on about regulation. If there's entities regulating something, they're going to manipulate it to their own ends. And they do today. Like,
that's one thing I can't figure a way around.
Do not.
There has to be a creator.
Illusions. Like, whatever country you live in, your money is totally being manipulated. Your economy is totally manipulated by the government, by multiple governments. Probably they're all circle jerking each other and basically taking the work from you for their own benefit.
Yeah. If you think about it, any economy has to have somebody that started it. Our economy is coin based, or like gold based, or whatever you want to.
Yeah, which actually goes back way beyond. The US,
but like somebody fashioned that. Somebody had to make that be a thing that everybody used. So that person was probably like, well, I created this, so I'm going to regulate it. And then somebody else was like, well, I could just create my own and regulate that. And then we'll, figure out some way to exchange our things of exchange based on what we value them and what the entire world wants to exchange things for. And
that's basically like governments. That's what they do.
In fact, what if the idea of government only still exists because we're hanging on to this antiquated idea of economy?
Oh, that's an interesting thought.
Like, a lot of regulation comes down to money, fines,
no, you're right. It actually does. Like, almost all of the actions and functions of governments center around some kind of monetary something.
If you truly want anarchy, you should actually be for taking greed away. Because that's what's like holding up. That's the crutch that's holding up our dependency on a government.
Well, and I don't know. I don't think you could take greed away because that's like a human function. But like, so what I was trying to, too much beer. What I was trying to say was like, the algorithmic side of things sounds really good, but I worry that it's going to become like a technocratic, kind of some kind of programmatical system where the something like, I don't know, Skynet or something like it, this dictatorial robot system that controls everything. And it becomes less about our own freedom and happiness and more about the algorithm for the sake of the algorithm.
If the algorithm became sentient, we could just put the coins down and stop using them. Like if we could switch to that system, we could switch off of it too.
Well, that's
if it grew into an entity and like took over the world, we could be like, well, fuck you, dude.
Yeah, it's true. But then
what about, like, what if there was even like fraud prevention and theft prevention built into coins? Like, once your coin is separated from your body, the cloud is like, did you approve this transaction? And if you're like, no, I've been robbed, then they just robbed something that's entirely worthless. Although,
but then fraud comes back again.
Yeah, you could be like, oh, I didn't like that burger. My money's not worth anything.
Somebody stole my money and bought a burger. Like, I mean, It's a really interesting idea.
Of course, you don't gain whatever you know.
Well, but you ate the burger. So there is that.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
And it was a
okay. Let's scrap that idea.
Yeah. What,
not all the ideas can be good.
Hashing out these kinds of concepts is the way to make things better. So I enjoy it. Like, yeah. I it's just so complex.
Dude, the economy as we have it is complex.
Oh, it is. Yeah. But that's because it's built on people. It's human
this
psychology.
Isn't different. Though.
Have you seen the DSM? Like, holy shit. And that isn't even, that's kind of like child's play. Like, well, we did, I think we did a lightning round topic about the DSM.
A lightning round topic. Yeah, we should do a whole episode on that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what was it? Do we need the DSM?
Yeah. Like, I mean,
in a similar vein, yeah, like we need to flip psychology on its head too, because calling everything a fucking disorder instead of diversity seems a little like,
I would, okay, you're right. I would actually challenge any psychiatrist or psychologist to point out to me one normal person.
Right.
Just one. Find one normal person out there. Find them. And you can't include yourself because you're not normal too. Like, guaranteed, I could flip through the DSM and find some kind of aberration that makes you not right.
A normal person couldn't be normal every day of their life, because what we consider normal is always shifting too.
Well, that's true. Well,
seeing tattoos on people, especially women, like that used to be something that you'd be like, that's odd. I don't see that every day. And now it's like, you see it all over the place. Like tattoos are like a thing now that people do to like express themselves.
Well, and it used to be that like women didn't smoke in public like they did in private, until Edward Bernays was hired to sell cigarettes to women.
You really don't like that
guy. No, actually, I admire him for his vision, but I have a severe dislike for him because of the damage he did to the world. But he's the reason that women started smoking, and smoking was cool. They're like, oh yeah, liberation sticks or whatever they call them. Something like that.
Liberation stick.
So I might have just made that up, but it was some kind of term like that. It was like he tied women smoking with the women's lib movement. So it's like, well, yeah, like, man. So yeah, now women are smoking all the time, and yeah, before that time, World War II era or whatever, it was like really rare to see women smoke, and then all of a sudden it was like common, like women smoking all the time, like in the 50s and stuff. I mean, we saw it in sitcoms of the time.
Yeah.
Perceptions change, I guess, in that regard.
Well, yeah, and I think perceptions could change about the way we do our money.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think it'll ever happen, but I do appreciate like what you're going for. And maybe, the thing is, like, this thought experiment and this conversation is really important for gaining control and power over this system.
Yeah.
Like, even if you don't actually change it, knowing more about it and having like your head on straight makes you less susceptible to being controlled by it, because being controlled by it, just like religion, is exactly how, well, that's what they want, right? Like they want everybody to be like beholden to it and like, oh, well, I need to make the ducats and pay the bills.
Holy shit. I just thought of like another great byproduct of my idea. Housing.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, the inflation of housing prices would be taken care of, because let's face it, there's a lot of empty houses sitting around because people can't afford to buy them. Like there's plenty of demand. There's plenty of homeless people. There's plenty of people living like me where I'm like, I wish I had my own place.
Mm-hmm.
But these places that could be our own place are like $1.5 million. And we're like, well, never. But they just sit there collecting dust and doing nothing for the economy. So it's like you would have to price that house down and down and down and down. But like, no matter what, you wouldn't worry that much, because supply and demand would also keep, like food affordable, and, you'd always have shelter. Like it would basically drive prices for things that are actually needed down to a median level, and things that are actually rare and more whimsical would be the ones that fluctuate up. Like I think it would actually like take care of a lot of the world's problems to think about doing money different.
Yeah, I mean, it could. I mean, the housing thing. Well,
Market prices when it comes to housing pisses me off. Like,
well,
why should
agree.
that? Why should that matter?
I could never buy a house where I live now. It's just not possible. But it is kind of weird, because like, well, if there's so many houses and buildings that are vacant, who's paying the property tax on these like $1 million structures? Because you got to be paying like thousands of dollars a month in property tax.
And they don't care, because they figure, even if I sit on this house for a year, I will spend less on the property tax than I would for, like paying the mortgage myself. Like,
maybe, but you're still paying the mortgage if you own it.
Yeah, that too. They just turn everything into numbers and like try to get the most numbers out of it as possible. And it's like, that's fucking creating all the bottlenecks in the economy.
Well, the thing is, like, I don't think there's any one solution or any one cause of a problem. Like housing, for instance, in my opinion, and that's my opinion, zoning and permitting are the core of why housing is expensive, because, well, you just can't build anymore. And so when people do build it, they're like, well, we're going to build luxury condos down on the water because it's fucking expensive. So we're just going to build and maximize the amount of money we can make.
But can't build a house. You have to authorize every payment with this, let's say. So if a government was like, you have to get this permit to build there, you could be like, well, I don't want to buy that permit, but I'm going to build it anyway. Stop me.
Hey, all right. Hey, respect. Yeah. Okay. I can get behind that.
Yeah. Like you could drive the price down of permits to the point where like there would be no point in having permits.
It could be like, swivel on it, punk.
Yeah. Nobody wants to buy that shit. The shit that nobody wants to buy would be worthless.
Mm-hmm.
So why sell it? And governments would have to get rid of permits.
Yeah. Well, and
there you go.
You're correct in that. But then again, one of the problems with your idea is, well, we've let governments kind of take everything over.
Gonna be guns, huh?
Well, no, it's not. I promise it won't. But we've sort of handed over the control of stuff to governments and said jurisdictions and things like that. And so if we want to change it, well, we can't just change it. We have to ask permission now, because now the government is the entity tasked with controlling this thing. You can't just have a good idea and just be like, yeah, I got a good idea, let's implement it. They're going to be like, well, no, because we're the guys, we're the ones that control everything. So like, well, and this does kind of go into jury nullification, where, you know, you have enough people who just kind of are like, yeah, we'll just let that slide, or just kind of do your own thing without asking permission, and eventually it changes. But it's really hard when you have an entrenched system like the government that like owns all the money. The government owns all the money.
Practically, something like this would never happen. Something like any actual change isn't going to happen unless we like burn down the government entirely, like overnight, and just start over.
Well,
like you can't do it piece by piece, because the cancer will spread faster than your fix. But
true. And there's resistance to change too. Like, all of us, we don't want to change our habits, even if it's for the better. Governments don't want to do the same thing. You know, they've got cushy jobs and nice pensions and a really awesome medical plan. Why would they want to, you know, just close up shop because it's a good idea? So yeah, you're right. Like, the only way that things can change, it's kind of like the French Revolution. You just have to cut everybody's head off. Don't demonetize us, YouTube, please. I'm not being literal there, but you have to cut off the heads of the oligarchy, the royalty and stuff, throw it all away, and then start from scratch. That's the only way.
Like, yeah. Humans are the crop that needs to be culled. And I don't say that in a Thanos type way. It's, you know, like you burn crops so that they can thrive again and live again, and in a healthy way. And it's only certain plants that you can do that with, but we just happen to be that kind of plant, and we're dying from stagnation.
Well, I would equate it more with the soil than the plant. Like, we are like rooted in rotten soil. It's harmful. It's caustic. It's making us sick. But, well, there we are. We're a plant stuck in the soil, trying to grow, you know, using the sunlight as we can and the moisture that we get. But we're, you know, under our feet is garbage. And that's kind of how I see things. Yeah, like, it's sort of the way I see the government. Oh my God, this is actually a really good episode.
Might need a commercial break here.
Maybe. Well, we might be able to wrap it up, possibly. Like the oh shit! Well, you distracted me. Now I can't remember. Okay. All right. All right. I haven't had too much beer yet, I swear. Oh, now I have. The way I see it is like, we're living in a house that has dry rot, and, you know, there's like weevils all over the place, and there's termites eating out the wood. Like, the glass is broken. Things are falling apart. You said eating out
and wood.
Points for going in that direction. Oh, this is going to go into the for the ladies playlist, I guess. But we're living in a house that's rotten through and through. Like it is barely functional as a house. Like when it rains, water comes in and we got buckets here and there. Like there's animals and rodents all over the place coming in because busted windows and doors that don't work and stuff like that. But hey, the political solution, this is the lunacy of people who think you can solve things through politics, is like, well, hey, you know what? You just put some paint on it, a new coat of paint, and it'll be fine. Right? Oh, it's totally good. Now it's a red house. Oh, yeah, it'll stand true. Oh, it's wavering. Oh, well, let's paint it blue now.
Oh, that's a really good analogy.
Like, you can't fix rot with paint. You just have to tear it down and start anew. And
I remember now I'm thinking of when we were painting our shop with like to get rid of the tannins in the wood. and look, we got all drunk
because it was an ethanol based paint. Oh God, yeah. We were so trashed. Oh my God, just from breathing the fumes.
No, I had cancer before that. That's
yeah. Oh man. Well, and these are the conversations we should have before we tear the house down, or before the house falls apart on its own.
Well,
we should have a plan in place so that when it inevitably fails, well, at least some people can agree on some stuff. I mean, it may not look, if the U.S. comes apart at the seams, it'll probably be balkanized. Like,
yeah,
you're going to see regions. And
this is basically like saying, if the economy is the plumbing in the house, it's like, okay, we got to tear out all the walls, all the pipes, everything has to go, and the new way has to go in for this to work. Like, well, you're going to have to take the whole house down at that point. You might as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then also be like, well, this didn't work quite right, so let's improve that while we're at it. And, you rebuild the house with the knowledge you've gained from your mistakes.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I love you're spot on that the economy is the plumbing in the house.
Yeah,
it really is. Damn. Shit, man.
I know, right? Like, I swear season 5 is going to be lit.
It's going to be like, we're going to be all in Zen mode, like all the time. Like, whoa.
It is really cool how we actually go down the drain and like get real deep into the core of all these subjects and like how they relate to being a human.
But what is awesome, what I love the most about this show, and I would hope other people do too, is how we start with these seemingly conflicting ideas and like stuff that normal people would come to blows over. And it would be as simple as that. And we go all meta, like, and all of a sudden we're like pulling up like completely new ideas that have never been thought of before. Like, that's great.
Or at least never spoken aloud until we came along and speaketh them aloud.
Spaketh. Oh man, I'm wondering if we've had too much beer. Oh my God, this is something we gotta cover more.
Mm-hmm. We're on to something.
Yeah, we have to come up with like a totally new category for this. Like, yeah, it's not economics, it's not psychology or sociology. It's like some
Philosophonomics.
philosophonomics. That's a good working title. Why not? Oh,
Yeah, really.
oh man. Well, because I don't care much about differences of opinion and ideologies and things like that. What I care about is, well, there's things that are problems, and I would like to solve them. You're
Yeah.
not going to solve problems by ignoring the problems and arguing over ideological differences. You solve problems by addressing the problem and brainstorming, essentially.
And you have to be open to the fact that, or the possibility that things that you cling to as like a bedrock of your understanding could have been wrong.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of science.
Yeah.
There's countless times throughout history where the general scientific consensus was, well, yay, surgeons don't have to wash their hands because what, are we dirty? And then, well, the germ theory came about and it's like, oh yeah, now everybody's like washing their hands and they're like not touching things before they go into surgery because we know about germs.
I think this principle of being able to let go of an idea that you cling to and why the ability to do so is so important is, think of a parent that their child grew up to be one of the most notorious serial killers, and you're watching the Netflix documentary on it, and the parents of this one serial killer are like, no, our son couldn't have done that. It's not him. He's rotting in jail and somebody else is out there. And then there's the parents who are like, yeah, my kid fucked up and I feel bad about that. I wish I could have done better. Like those are two different kinds of people. The people that can change their minds versus the ones that just cling. Like, my kid can do no wrong. No matter how much evidence you show me, they're not a serial killer. Like,
sure,
that's a dangerous way of thinking.
It is, and that's why I am such a firm advocate of fuzzy logic. People, this is a human failing, but people tend to have this kind of granularity in their logic. Like things have to be in a box, in this box or that box. It's like, well, why can't it be a little of this, a little of that? Why can't it be fluid? Things should be fluid, like, because that's the universe. Things just are. Like, our observations dictate our understanding of things. Our language dictates the way we convey ideas about those things. But just because we can observe a thing and record a thing and document it, well, that doesn't make, oh, hi, Floyd. It doesn't make that thing only those things. Like, there may be all kinds of unseen, there was a time we could only capture the visible light spectrum through photography. And even then it was black and white photography. Well, there was like a whole color world beyond that. And there's the UV part of the spectrum and infrared and like X-rays and stuff. I mean, the X-rays is how we've actually been able to take a picture of the giant black hole at the center of our own galaxy. Oh yeah. If you didn't know,
Our
There was one of those.
skeleton.
Well, it's scary, but not that scary because, well, if you're going to live for like, 200 billion years, you might possibly fall into the event horizon. But then time and space won't matter anymore. So is it really that bad?
I challenge you to a duel across space and time.
Hmm. Hmm. I just, I don't think there is like a one size fits all answer to anything, honestly. Like, I think we're always going to be having conversations, and that's good. Like, God, I just thinking about it, looking out there, just in the world of Facebook across Earth, like how many conflicts there are and arguments there are. Like, the idea that Gene Roddenberry had of different species from different planets getting along, like, we can't fucking get along on our own planet. I can't even imagine what would happen if like the Klingons or the Vulcans came here, or both.
Well, God, yeah, I know what you mean. The vitriol is real. Like today, a mutual friend of ours posted on Facebook that her son was safely home from an active shooter situation. And I was looking all over the news, like watching it like a hawk. I was like, oh no, like there might be people I know whose kids are in danger. And finally something comes across the news, and it was somebody like trying to scare off a bear that shot 2 bullets into the ground and then took off. And people knowing that now, we're still like, he needs to be found and arrested and his guns taken away. And like, I don't give a fuck if he had to protect himself. He put my kids in danger. What really what they're saying is, oh no, they scared my kids. I want them to die for that. Like, wow.
and the only reason the kids are scared is because the adults are scared. That's the thing. I actually saw something similar where there was
like you can hear gunshots and be completely fine. Like happens all the time.
The odds of actually, like, Mythbusters tested that. Like, it takes a very special set of circumstances for random gunshots to, bullets flying through the air to do you any actual damage. I recently saw or heard something on the radio where there was a school was locked down because everybody was scared. There was a guy with a gun in the vicinity of a school.
Right.
So
not actually at the school.
No, they were outside the school, and it turns out it's just an airsoft gun.
Active shooter.
Yeah.
It's like somebody near a school with a thing that looks like a gun is considered an active shooter.
It was a plastic gun that shoots plastic pellets. Like, it wasn't even a real gun. I mean, yeah, I know. Airsoft guns look like real guns. The thing is, like, but a little bit of knowledge goes a long way. I remember going in to a store, and in the stores that I work at, they collect dangerous things. So if somebody has like hand grenades or guns or ammo, or it's kind of surprising the stuff that they don't allow. But I went into a store to fix something, and a store manager had a pirate pistol on the table, the desk, manager's desk. And I was like, oh, hey, that's kind of neat. And she's like, oh, well, that just came in through donations. We're about to send it off to LP because we don't know if it's a real gun. And I'm like, it's not a real gun. And she's like, are you sure? And I'm like, well, it's only obvious. Like, it's made of plastic. You could see the plastic seams and it's made of plastic. And I was like, you mind if I pick it up? And I picked it up and it weighed like nothing. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's totally not a real gun. It's a toy. It's not even a cap gun. It just looks like a pirate pistol. Like it doesn't have any functionality whatsoever. But they were like, "Ooh, we better not touch that." Like,
well, I think Queensryche back 20 years or so was doing one of their Operation Mindcrime tours where they would actually go out and like act out the concept album, and there were toy guns involved in their stage play. And like right after 9/11, they like got held up by security because they had fake guns in their luggage that was like underneath the plane or something, you know, like wow, just calm down.
Yeah, well, and in fact, you can in the US, you can fly with firearms if they're unloaded and in the checked baggage, I think. It's crazy. But you know, 9/11, people freaked out. That was a crazy time. But
unloaded. Does that mean you can't bring any ammo with you, or it just has to be like the magazine is not in the gun?
The magazine is separate from the firearm. Yeah.
Does that actually matter? Like from like like could the gun accidentally go off from air pressure or
no? Not
so
possible.
like a gun with a magazine already in it versus a gun where I go like that. Mm-hmm. And put the magazine back.
Yeah.
That's suddenly safe.
Okay. Magazine in the gun, bad. Magazine outside, totally okay. You can fly with that shit. Like, and it kind of illustrates like the lunacy out there. And
well, if somebody has to put a magazine into a gun, you could surely overtake them before that happens. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you should. Dude, you should see the people firing like black powder revolvers, like fanning the hammer and stuff like that. They're basically like full autoing with like an old school Civil War era revolver.
I didn't know those could hold more than one round.
6, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like it just shows like there's a lot of nuance. And well, this is kind of like, hey, this is kind of a segue into maybe the next episode. Possibly. But yeah, like it just shows there's a lot of nuance to things. Tune in.
Same kitchen sink time, same kitchen sink channel.
Yep. That's what I was going to do.
No, microscopy.
Oh, man.
Think, discuss, talk.
Oh, man.
That was instead of the Biff Pow Oof, in case nobody picked up on that.
That like comic book things. Sadly, we don't have all the titty girls to. Oh well, I should probably shut up before I dig myself a hole.
Well, my back teeth are floating, so that might be a good point to end on.
I think so.
That was very interesting. I knew it would be, but I didn't think we'd find the enlightenment of what economy really is, but we did.
Yeah.
And I've forgotten it already, but it's a good thing we have this episode so I can watch it later.
It's being recorded
and be like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. I was really drunk.
Well, but you know, just like lyrics in a song, you just say stuff and people think you're some kind of guru. But we actually kind of are. I would say.
Mm-hmm. And our lyrics are pretty cool too.
Yes. And the music, like, oh my God. So, there's probably a pretty awesome tune queuing up right now. I don't know if you can hear it, but yeah.
You should totally go to patreon.com/KSMvidcast because you can get it like now. Like this song you're hearing now.
The whole song, not just
right.
a clip.
That's right.
Oh, man.
Hella cheap.
Mhm.
Just saying. Only 10 matchsticks.
Yeah, like 1.5 isolinear chips. Oh man, they actually make those, so I might have to get some.
Ridges?
Huh?
Oh, not that kind of chip.
The isolinear chip, like reproductions of the.
I thought you meant like Lay's isolinear chips.
Oh, no, you can't. Okay, if you buy a Lay's isolinear chips, there's like maybe a chip or two in the bag, and it's mostly air.
Yeah.
Talk about. Well,
there needs to be a parody where Jordy's like, God damn it, I got this bag of Lay's isolinear chips, and there's only like 10 in here, and the rest is air.
Oh. Man, this is so good. Well, for all the people that are still here after all this time, thank you.
And have a great night.